It was on this spot 192 years ago that Lieutenant John Shortland from the Royal Navy stepped ashore in the search for escaped convicts from the Hawkesbury River area. Instead of finding the runaways, Shortland discovered rich deposits of coal. This led to the establishment of the Port of Newcastle, the coal industry, the city and the development of the Hunter Valley. It is planned to hold similar ceremonies each year as a lead up to the city's 200th anniversary of the discovery by Lieutenant Shortland. The Newcastle Vietnam Legion, with family and friends honoured the fallen from 10 years of battle in the Vietnam War. 1,700 people from the Hunter fought in the conflict, 19 didn't come home.
We served there. For us, we'll always remember it. We'll certainly always remember those 19 guys that didn't come back.
The veterans marched with Army, Navy and Air Force cadets from Hunter Street to the Vietnam Memorial in Civic Park. With a guard of honour, the fallen were given a minute's silence. And later, speakers praised the men who lost their lives for their country. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Australs made all the early running against the breeze but couldn't get the goal they needed. But it wasn't long before the inevitable happened, and it was one of Australs' most consistent players, Dean McGuirter, who opened the scoring. Polonia's best move in the first half was saved brilliantly by Craig Carter, and then it was Wayne Bailey who crossed superbly into the box, and Robbie Holden was there to get Australs' second goal. Polonia nearly pulled one back early in the second half when a shot was parried onto the upright, and then Jan Duda had a crack, but it was just wide. Playing with a lot of spirit, Australs added their third goal, but it took a while to get into the back of the net after Kevin Shaw used some clever footwork to finally get the ball to Holden, and he scored his second of the afternoon. David Bowen got one more, and the final score was Australs 4, Polonia 0. A gala day of activities on and off the water signalled the opening of the sailing season for the Belmont 16-foot Sailing Club. Around 150 craft of all shapes, sizes and decorations took part in the traditional sail past. The 1989-90 season will be a big one for the Belmont Club, with major events such as the World Windsurfer Championships and the 50th anniversary Australian VJ titles. Today it was fun time, supported by a jazz band and plenty of razzmatazz to welcome in the new sailing season. At the Newcastle Police Citizens Youth Club, the Newcastle and Hunter Valley Karate Championships were conducted as a prelude to the upcoming Australian Championships. Competitors from under 8 to 21 took part in the age events, and there was also open competition. Over 220 people took part, and as you would expect with a contact in this form of martial art, the occasional bit of blood was spilt, but nothing serious, as it's all part and parcel of competition.
The aim of the meeting at the Newcastle Workers' Club was to explain to rank-and-file workers the benefits of a union-based redundancy scheme and to enlist their support. Union spokesman Andrew Ferguson urged workers to persuade their bosses to join the scheme called CERT. It's in opposition to an existing scheme which is backed by the Master Builders Association and employer groups. Today, building workers were told the CERT scheme was the only one that ensured security for themselves and their families.
They're greatly concerned about the issue of redundancy pay. They're very strongly opposed to attempts by the master builders to prevent a court decision being implemented. The employers have gone to the court and got an injunction against a court decision being enforced. And workers at this meeting were incensed, and they're quite determined to ensure that building workers in Newcastle get redundancy pay.
Already 3,000 building workers are involved in the scheme, with over 300 employers contributing. Workers agreed to step up their campaign to persuade more employers to join up, and they voted to stop work every Tuesday afternoon in support of their claims. The Master Builders Association said it was dismayed at today's stoppage, saying the question of redundancy is being determined by the Australian Industrial Relations Commission next week.
Despite numerous campaigns to encourage people to belt up, hundreds of people each year are killed or injured in car accidents. Injuries that could have been prevented if seatbelts had been worn. The Roads and Traffic Authority believes seatbelts can cut deaths and injuries by 50% in adults and up to 90% in children. Acting Traffic Services Commander for Newcastle Region, Sergeant Terry Davonshire, says police will target drivers who allow children to go unrestrained.
I think we realise that the responsibility does lie with the parents or the driver of the motor vehicle to ensure that those children are secured in proper child restraints. Otherwise, in the event of an accident, they seem to move around the inside of a motor vehicle like a loose projectile.
Police will also adopt unusual tactics to catch offenders.
We will have police, some of them in plain clothes, located at intersections where they can observe the public and their normal driving habits. Those persons who are not wearing their seatbelts or who have children who are not in approved child restraints will be stopped probably half a kilometre down the road and the appropriate action taken.
The operation will begin at midnight tonight, and during the next 3 days, all police cars will turn their headlights on during daylight hours for a higher profile. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
More than 200 clubs and pubs in New South Wales took the live telecast. A first in the area of industrial relations, the $15,000 satellite link gave the rank and file of the Teachers Federation a direct line to the union leaders in Sydney. Of the 3,000 teachers in the Hunter, 2,700 turned up at 25 different venues. The teachers are angry that Education Minister Metherell is not prepared to support a 15% pay rise without a similar rise in productivity.
So what he's saying to us is if we're prepared to allow an attack on the learning conditions of children for the money, yes, we can have the money, but we're not prepared to trade off children's learning conditions or indeed teachers' working conditions.
The teachers voted to continue an attack of rolling half-day stoppages if their demands are not met within a month. With state politicians getting an 11% pay hike and teachers in Queensland getting rises of up to 30%, the teachers believe their demands are just. They say they are struggling to survive.
I have to work 2 extra jobs. They are teaching jobs, but they are extra to my job here at the high school.
Just to make ends meet?
Yes.
Graduate teachers start on a wage of $24,000, rising to $32,000 after 8 years of service. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
This is no ordinary cooking competition. Entrants must meet the most exacting standards to earn a prestigious Salon Culinary medal, and presentation is paramount.
We're looking for a balance of flavours, combinations of colours and textures. The presentation needs to be immaculate. You're looking at the finish of the item. And so it really does take a lot more time and effort than you can put into it in a restaurant situation.
This may be lamb cutlets and veggies, but it's a far cry from the version served on most Australian dinner tables. The judges liked it. In fact, it was named as one of today's top entries. This entry from the Apollo restaurant at Charlestown also impressed the judges, as did this creation by a Tamworth chef. As always, the most eye-catching entries were in the sculpting class. For this chef, culinary creativity met with electromechanics in a 20-kilo block of margarine.
I had to rip a cassette recorder apart and a little cassette player, and the motor is actually a turntable of a record player.
And just some food for thought. This mouth-watering spread will only ever tantalise the taste buds. After hours under hot lights, it's not fit for human consumption.
Operation Phone the Police began at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Since then, the phones at Newcastle Police Station have been running hot. The operation was set up to gather information on crime around Newcastle, Merewether and the Junction, but calls have been received from as far north as Foster. Police want information on any unusual or suspicious activity, no matter how small it might seem.
Anything in relation to crime that people want to tell us, Jody, so that we're very interested in the public telling us anything at all tonight, whatever they would like to talk about, whether it's information or whether it's advice. We ask, we plead with the people, give us a ring.
In particular, police are targeting breaking and entering, car stealing and drug trafficking. 2 officers from the Child Mistreatment Unit are also on hand to talk to anyone with information on child sexual or physical abuse. The phones are open until 10 o'clock. The number to call is 290 822.
Rosebuds went through the season proper with a loss of only 2 games, and in their encounters with Western had a 4-2 win in the first round and a 1-1 draw in the second. Adamstown then produced the form of the year to wallop West Wallsend 5-1 in the major semi-final to move straight into this year's grand final. Western workers have made the climb back to the top after being highly successful in the late 70s and early 80s. In the minor semi-final they defeated Cardiff 1-0 in extra time, and then West Wallsend last week 2-1 to advance to the decider. Dominic Moroney for Western and Peter Windsor for the Buds will be each side's main attacking weapons. The match begins at 7 p.m. Also tomorrow, beginning at 2:30 p.m, the Newcastle Men's Hockey Association conduct their grand final at University Oval. The home team Uni will start as the sentimental favourites against the defending premiers Norths. Uni are chasing their first grand final victory in their 23-year history of the Newcastle competition. They are appearing in their 3rd grand final since 1986, but they are up against a team that knows what it takes to win the grand final. Norths are aiming to add their 18th premiership to their stable since 1959. They have also won 8 premierships this decade, a marvellous achievement. University without doubt have been the glamour club in the 80s, and on this year's form alone will start favourite for the big one tomorrow at the No. 2 Sports Ground. Uni were good winners over Merewether in the major semi-final a fortnight ago and have had the break to rest any nagging injury problems. For University captain Scott Ginninan, he's not only leading his team into the biggest match of the year, he's also playing his 100th first-grade game. Scott feels that after the initial battle in the forwards, it will develop into an all-round game by both teams. Wherever the match is played, there won't be any prisoners taken.
I think it's going to be a tough battle both ways. They've got a good attacking back line as we do, so hopefully that'll make it an exciting game. And they have a big pack, the same as we do, so it's, we're expecting it to be the toughest game yet. They weren't as tough as we expected in the major semi, but in the grand final we're expecting to be very tough.
David Chapman has captained the Greens in their previous 2 grand final appearances in 1987 and 88, and he is sure the Greens can take Uni on in the forward successfully.
You know, the fundamental issue tomorrow is what's going to happen in the tight 5, especially in the scrum. University scrum in the major semi was very, very strong. We've done a lot of work with our scrum over the last couple of weeks. We've had some outside tuition from Sydney on that, and I believe that will be a far stronger proposition in our scrum. If our scrum performs well and we get to the breakdown quickly, I believe that's what will decide the game.
And can David guide his troops to that elusive victory?
If there's any justice, 3rd time might prove lucky for our team.
Carrington residents saw the unusual sight today of this two-storey high-wide load crawling through their streets. Traffic was diverted and power lines were raised during the 2.5-kilometre trip to the Western Basin. The EC Close is the Maritime Services Board's backup pilot boat, which will be used to guide large ships in and out of Newcastle Harbour. The main pilot boat, the Governor Macquarie, saluted its new partner before it was lifted from the trucks. The aluminium vessels are identical, 16.5 metres long, more than 5 metres wide and weigh 27 tonnes. The EC Close will replace this old timber boat, the Goondaloo, which, after 30 years of harbour work, will be donated to the Coffs Harbour Volunteer Coastal Patrol. While this wasn't the official launching, the EC Close attracted plenty of onlookers, including its builder.
I think it looks quite good. The proof's in the pudding, as so they say.
This pilot boat is the first to be built in this region and the first for the Marlin Truck Bodies organisation. A few anxious moments as it goes into the water?
No, not terribly worried at all. I've had my sleepless nights.
That confidence was rewarded with a careful but successful first dip into the water. Next Monday, a much larger vessel hits the water, the 3,500-tonne icebreaker, the Aurora Australis. The $60 million 18-month project has been completed and the Prime Minister's wife, Hazel Hawke, will officially launch and name the ship at Carrington Slipway's Tomago. Today, workers were busy with finishing touches to the icebreaker. Woody Lafitte, NBN News.
The Wallsend Swans had to do it the hard way, coming from 4th position to fight their way into the grand final, and after being 49 points down at half-time, got up to defeat Warners Bay and regain the Black Diamond Cup. It's the oldest football trophy in Australia, and one that has taken a century for Wallsend to get their hands on. Today, the Victoria's team and their supporters were given the accolades of its hometown. Watching the proceedings were descendants of the 1889 Wallsend team. Jack and Joe Conn's grandfather John played in that team, as did Marjorie Slott's father. A famous name responsible for the introduction of the manly game of Australian football to Wallsend was Dewguide. George Dewguide, whose father was also in that side, was there to see the cup return to its original winners. Member for Wallsend, John Mills, accepted the trophy from the club on behalf of the people of the district. For Bill Elliott, the man largely responsible for the reformation of the club in 1979 and who only last Friday was awarded the Order of Australia Medal for services to sport and the community, is delighted that this battling club has come back with a vengeance.
One of the greatest things that ever happened for Australian football in Newcastle, Mike. Very, very good performance by the club and tremendous.
For NAFL President Don Geddes, it will really give the code a lift.
Wallsend has been behind the 8 ball. It's given the game a very good lift and it's given Wallsend a very good lift. And I think with the glory that will flow from this particular win, it'll improve the game and the standard of the game in Newcastle.
Hospital workers, local residents, environmentalists and politicians joined forces to show the community's concern against the proposal.
No sale of public land, save the environment. No sale of public land, save the environment.
According to the protesters, a 1,200-hectare package of bushland stretching from Morisset Point south to Waihee Bay is planned to go under the auctioneer's hammer. The government has marked 16 areas for sale throughout the state to fund a $500 million hospital reconstruction program. Meeting in a local park, the protesters heard speeches from government opposition spokesmen slamming Peter Collins and Premier Greiner for putting business before the people.
Seen this government take on the real estate agents' business. They look at everything they've got and say, how much can we get for it and how fast can we flog it?
Rally organiser Shane Buckley says the Health Minister is breaking pre-election promises.
2.5 years ago, Mr Peter Collins came to a meeting at Morisset Hospital and he gave a pre-election promise that Morisset Hospital land would not be sold. Now we're calling on him to honour that word.
A spokesman for Mr Collins denies such a promise. He says the decision will not be made on the Morisset land until the end of the year. Lake Macquarie Mayor Ivan Welsh says the whole affair is a political bun fight which began years ago.
Now, the only thing that gets me upset with the whole thing is the total hypocrisy of both sides of the politic, because council was aware that this land was going to be sold 5 years ago. Now, we've got a bunch of people up there on the stand saying, oh, it shouldn't be sold, but they were the ones who were going to sell it 5 years ago.
Do you think
they're both hypocrites, and they should both come out and tell the people what's going on?
Shadow Health Minister Andrew Rafshorgi denied the Labor Party has ever proposed the sale of the land. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Australia is the lucky country. Every weekend thousands pick up their rackets, bats and balls and participate in their favourite sports. We've become competitive and have reached the top in many sports worldwide. But there's another group of our men and women who aren't so fortunate, the intellectually handicapped. Today you wouldn't have found a happier group. Mention sport and games to these people and they will knock you over in the rush to get to the fields. This weekend at the Hunter Institute of Higher Education, the New South Wales Special Olympic Soccer Championships are being conducted and teams in 3 divisions from 5 regions are here for the titles. Under the watchful eyes of National Coaching Director for the Special Olympics, Newcastle's Leon Burwell, individual events such as dribbling skills, shooting accuracy against the clock, along with throwing of the soccer ball, make up the all-round competition and help to fill in the time between matches, as well as sharpening each person's proficiency. And when the match is on, it's as serious as the big time. Well, almost. And it's kind of special being a spectator to witness the enjoyment of a goal being scored or the applause for a good effort.
These are the chemicals which are commonly found in the gardener's back shed or garage. Strong acids, oil, solvents, insecticides, weedicides and medicines, all of which can only be safely disposed by the professionals. At the Newcastle Council's Waratah depot, chemicals banned for domestic use such as chlordane and dieldrin were brought in. High levels of chlordane were recently noticed in fish near the sewage outlet at Burwood Beach. Organisers estimate only 1 or 2% of chemicals were handed in, leaving a huge range of dangerous poisons still in the community.
What can the Water Board do about that?
Well, can't do a great deal. It destroys the environment once they are put in the sewers. We can only encourage people not to do it. If they see any in their garages or in their sheds, to bring them to a disposal site. Ring us any time, night or day, and we'll come collect it if they can't get it here.
The chemicals collected are taken to Sydney and buried in a special clay bed. The campaign continues tomorrow.
Conditions were ideal at Tomago for the start of the race, but as the morning wore on, it became hotter, and the 60 competitors in the marathon had to work that little bit harder. But it was not only a physical battle, but it developed into a mental contest as well. As the race continued, it was obvious no one was going to set an earth-shattering time, but the effort of Greg Love from Gosford was full of merit. Greg crossed the line in first place in a time of 2 hours 35.5 minutes, a staggering 11 minutes in front of second place getter Bernie Serick from Merriweather. Terry Strawn from Warners Bay was third in a time of 2 hours 49.16. Gail Sanderson was the first lady to finish, and she finally passed the post in a time of 3 hours 17, an unbelievable 46 minutes ahead of her nearest rival, Lynn Cribb from Gosford. Also a half marathon was conducted and 140 starters set out on the 26-kilometre course. And it developed into a three-way battle between Brian Morgan, David Rundle and David Anderson. In the final analysis, it was Morgan who won the day in a time of 69.55 minutes, from Rundle a further 2 minutes in arrears, with Anderson a second behind Rundle. For the ladies, it was a win to Janice Davis in 1:28.08 from Judy Fletcher and Joanne Bolts.